Good morning, everybody. I'd like to begin by thanking Manitobans for their efforts in allowing us to move to phase 2 of restoring our services and putting us on the road to recovery. It's an exciting time. Seeing increased activity around City of Winnipeg and around the province is heartening, and it happened because of Manitobans, and it'll continue because of Manitobans. More and more businesses and services are opening their doors this week, and I must use this opportunity to remind everyone that life has not returned to normal. Please stay vigilant, continue to take precautions, listen to the advice of our public health officials, avoid a COVID comeback. You're the reason we got where we are, and you're the reason we're going to continue to succeed, but we have to be disciplined in this time of increased freedoms. We can't let those freedoms cause us to have a COVID comeback and then have to go backward. I want to provide some updates today on initiatives that we've taken to assist Manitobans in this unprecedented time. Our Manitoba GAP program, which was designed to complement the federal programs and work in tandem with them, is doing exactly that. And our small businesses that need a bridge to a stronger and better future as they work to reopen safely are getting the supports they need. I'm proud to share with you today that more than 4,700 small businesses are receiving their GAP funding, which is, I am told, the second most generous such support program in Canada. That's over $28 million already paid out, with applications continuing to come in. And we want those applications to come in as businesses move to reopen. We want to encourage all Manitoba small businesses to reopen safely with the proper protocols. And we want to encourage all employees to take the opportunity to come back as soon as possible to work. Don't wait for the federal subsidy supports to run out. If you've got a chance to get back to work, please use this opportunity to get back to work and to help your company and your services be offered to the public safely. Our Economic Support Center, I should mention, which is our call center, has spoken with more than 100,000 businesses, not-for-profits, charities, other community groups as well, to let them know about the GAP program, about the summer student program, about other programs we've designed to support you as Manitobans to get back going again. We want to do everything we can to make sure that Manitobans who need this support are supported during these challenging times. I want to talk for a second about an issue we raised last week with the launch of our new website, and for those of you who have an appreciation for the importance of post-secondary education, you'll also very likely understand that it creates some financial obligations for young people and their families. The best way to get prepared to go to post-secondary institutions, if you have those challenges, is to get some work. And over the summer, we want to help as many young Manitobans get work as we possibly can. We launched our website last Thursday. So far, under the Summer Student Job Recovery Program, more than 900 employers have applied for wage subsidy for over 2,000 student positions. And we're really encouraged by that, but we're ready to do even more. Since we launched the app on Thursday, we have seen over 5,000, I repeat, over 5,000 job applications, and that number is rising as I am speaking to you right now. So I want to really encourage Manitoba small businesses to take a look at hiring young people. This is an important opportunity for you, and it's important for them. So I ask you to get on that website, hook yourself up with the young person of your choice, because you've got some amazing options available to you, and make sure that we get our young people the work opportunities that they deserve to have in these coming weeks and months. Manitoba was the first province to sign on to the cost-sharing plan, commit to the cost-sharing plan with the federal government that I'm going to be talking about here now, to provide additional compensation to frontline workers during this pandemic. Thousands of Manitoba workers have been working to serve others and to keep us safe, and they've been doing so in times that were stressful for all of us, but they were taking additional risks in doing so too. And so we appreciate that. And when the federal government suggested this program, we were first to say, let's get on board with it. Now, your government's been working hard to set out our risk recognition program by working directly with those who provide essential services, such as our labor groups, trade unions, and our small business community. Our initial meetings, two meetings occurred over a 2-week period. We got feedback, obviously, at each meeting, in particular at the first one, and then responded with alternative opportunities for issues to be dealt with in this very complex area. We wanted to make sure that we had a fair plan that compensated Manitobans for their additional risks as much as could be done fairly. We recognized that it was difficult, and there were many difficult issues that had to be addressed, but we asked our group to consider, after the 2 meetings and discussion and the give and take that happened there, which I thank all the groups for, 5 different packages of proposals to see if we could get a consensus, and we have. I want to take a moment to thank each of these groups that took part in this discussion, and to say to them and their representatives a sincere thank you for being part of this process. I think there was some real trepidation at the beginning from some of the groups that this was going to be more a political exercise than a public policy one. And I hope every group would agree that the way in which our finance officials led this process and partnered with them was a really good approach, and I hope they would agree that regardless of our disagreements on some aspects among the group, that the consensus we arrived at was fair, balanced, and reasonable. I want to say thank you to Abilities Manitoba, the Business Council of Manitoba, the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Christian Labour Association of Canada, CUPE, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals, the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce, Manitoba Child Care Association Incorporated, the Manitoba Nurses Union, the Manitoba Government and General Employees Union, the Retail Council of Manitoba, Unifor, the United Food and Commercial Workers, and the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to all of these groups, sincerely, for their ideas, their suggestions, their comments, their appraisal. I think what we've arrived at is a consensus that we can now deliver with pride. We're going to be implementing a program to deliver our risk recognition programs for workers with low and middle income levels. Many different workers, I should point out, are playing important roles during this global pandemic, from nurses to personal care home staff to grocery store cashiers, those who stock shelves, security guards, bus drivers. And I should mention too, every worker in our province is important. So while we recognize others today, we need to remember the sacrifices that many others who will not be recognized today are making every day. And I want to say to them, to the Manitobans who are working reduced hours right now, we're working diligently to get you back your work and your hours. To those who have lost their jobs, we're working diligently to create an opportunity for you to get your jobs back. And to small businesses facing uncertainty, we're working diligently to make sure that we get back to a period of growth such as we've enjoyed in the last few years, and even beyond that, to find Manitoba leading the way in terms of making progress against this global pandemic. Chaque travailleur est important. Donc, alors que nous reconnaissons les autres, voulons également nous souvenir des sacrifices que beaucoup d'autres font chaque jour. Beaucoup travaillant des heures réduites, certains ont perdu leur emploi. De nombreuses petites entreprises sont confrontées à l'incertitude. This is why resiliency matters, and we will continue on the road to recovery, and we will avoid a COVID comeback by maintaining the disciplined and focused approach not only of the government of Manitoba, but also of Manitobans in respect of respecting one another. This one-time payment is available for all income-tested workers who put in part-time or full-time hours since the state of emergency started on March the 20th until May the 29th, as well as those who would have worked but had to follow public health orders to self-isolate. The full list of eligible positions and organizations, along with online application forms, will be available online tomorrow at manitoba.ca/COVID-19. The key to this turnaround is going to be a strong economic recovery, and Manitobans will get there by sticking to the fundamentals, not only to save lives, but also to allow Manitobans to get their own lives back. La clé de ce redressement sera une forte reprise économique et les Manitobains y parviendront en respectant les principes fondamentaux, non seulement pour sauver des vies, mais pour permettre à tous les Manitobains de retrouver leur vie. Together, we will beat this thing. Thank you. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one preliminary question and one follow-up question. Up first this morning from the Winnipeg Sun, Scott.
Hello, Premier. Scott Bilster from Winnipeg Sun. I'm just looking over the release. Is there a number of employees or an estimate number of people that will receive this, and how much will they be receiving?
Scott, we think approximately 100,000 workers could be eligible. The amount could be around $1,000, but don't hold me to that because it depends on the sign-up, and really that is the key. So we're looking for sign-ups. The deadline is June 18th, so we've given a fair bit of time for people to sign up, I think, and then we'll verify applications, and successful applicants will get their payments by direct deposit into their bank accounts.
Okay, and sorry, I've been looking over this thing. For the what's the message, I suppose, to those that are left out? I mean, everybody, there's so many people here that we considered, heroes and all that kind of stuff during this pandemic. What is the message right now to those who have been, I suppose, left out or fall through the gaps of this?
Sure, this has been a difficult process, and I think what we've endeavored to do over the last couple of weeks is bring groups together who have different perspectives, for sure, because they represent different workers from different walks of life. But to make sure that we're remembering to consider all those workers in the context of this discussion and arrive at a consensus that's fair and reasonable. And we've been able to do that. And again, I just have to say thank you to all the participants that gave us their input and helped us develop our plan. Some said, well, why don't you just pitch the money out? Well, it's not that simple. I think that what we've done here is we've come up with a consensus solution that has the broad-based support of workers and their representatives.
From CBC Manitoba, Ian.
Good morning, Premier. Law enforcement is among the categories of workers that are eligible. I'm not sure if one of their union representatives were sort of in those conference calls with you guys. Why is law enforcement among the categories chosen here?
I'm sorry, and you clicked out on me, and I missed the preamble there. You were talking about a group that wasn't consulted, were you? Or I'm sorry, I didn't get all your preamble.
Sure. I guess I was wondering why law enforcement was included among the groups that you cited in terms of consulting with the province. I don't see sort of a law enforcement group that was a part of that.
Yeah, I can only tell you that we understand and appreciate the work that our law enforcement officials do, as we do with our firefighters, paramedics, and so on. I think I'll just say I think the consensus among their group was that the job description that they were hired under is pretty much what they've had to deal with, and that they wanted the benefits to accrue to other people who had new stresses and new risks that they had to deal with that they didn't have to pre-pandemic.
Okay. Will every employee that is eligible for the program that applies for this program will receive the money? Because you've referenced it could be $100,000, or there could be as many as 100,000 employees. Will every employee who qualifies receive money?
Well, I'll say yes with qualification here. Remember, it's an income-tested benefit. It's designed for middle and lower income people, and so there's that caveat. But yeah, that's the intention. And I will say also, Finance has offered to put the information. I'm not sure if it's there right now, but we can get it there, I think, by end of day. Has offered to put all the information out about how the discussions were structured and the nature of the discussions, without revealing. One thing that the groups that participated wanted was that their vote would be kept as a secret. So they have all had the chance to vote on a package they thought was the best, and then to decide to support the consensus. They asked that their vote be kept a secret. So we're doing that. But at the same time, we're able to give you the information on the process in more detail, I think, later today.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press. Premier, why was the decision made to cap the income at $2,500 a month? I know you have to cap it somewhere, but $30,000 a year seems might exclude some people who are lower middle income who earn a bit more than that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that was one of the challenges that the group faced, Steve, and I think that they arrived at a consensus that basically represents a desire to see that middle and lower income group get the lion's share of the benefits, let's be frank. It's a difficult decision. I can only say that I think it was clear from the federal, remember the federal government is partnering on this program, and the communication of the Prime Minister on this was very clear. Initially, he thought that this should be a program aimed at minimum wage workers. We've extended it quite a bit above that to include more folks, and that's the consensus that the group that designed this compensation package agreed to.
And do you think that the 100,000 employees potential is realistic, given that some of the groups here, nurses, paramedics, police officers, I assume most of these people make more than $30,000 a year?
Well, again, that's the estimates we have, are that this would work out to about 100,000 workers that would have the eligibility out of our total workforce in the province, Steve. So we're looking to get this money out to those folks. If there are fewer applicants, there'll be a bigger check per applicant.
From CTV Winnipeg, Charles.
Good morning, Premier. Charles with CTV Winnipeg. Just changing topics a little bit. Yesterday, the NGEU in the province came to an agreement regarding days off, unpaid days off, to avoid layoffs. Do you have any additional comments on the decision and the agreement the union has made?
Well, I would just say two things. First of all, thanks to the MGU for the cooperative approach they've taken, not only in those negotiations, but also as part of the team that arrived at this recommendation. I want to thank Michelle Gavronsky for her professional approach and for her ongoing willingness to dialogue, as I have with her and her organization. On the other issue, most certainly what we've tried to do as a government, and I think the MGU has demonstrated they support this approach, is to limit the number of people impacted by layoff. We have tried to keep our people at work as much as possible, and we've arrived at I think, a fair and reasonable solution that significant percentage, I believe, of Manitoba government employees would support as doing their part towards the COVID challenge that we face together.
And just to follow up on that question, are there any negotiations continuing with other provincial unions regarding this? And do you have any information on status of that?
Yeah, I understand agreement's been reached not just with MGU, but with several other representative bargaining bodies, and more to say on that very likely in the next few days.
From City News, Jonas.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. It's Jonas Gilbard from City News. As we speak today, we are being asked to examine our societal constructs in a way that we haven't for decades in our society. As you watch what's unfolding right now south of the border, the overwhelming anger, the distrust, and I think what everyone's looking for is leadership. What I want to ask you today, sir, is your leadership on things like this? How do you move forward?
Well, I've always believed that peace and love and understanding have to replace discord and violence and racism, so I'll continue to say that. And I think it's critical that we demonstrate our understanding in ways that are nonviolent. And so, as reprehensible as the racist actions are, the overreaction and the violence chosen by some, by I think a significant minority of protesters in parts of the United States and Canada, is not something I can support, not something any of us should support. What we're after here, what all of us want, is a life which is full of opportunity and full of peace and faith and security in one another, and that's especially so post-pandemic. As we come out of this thing, we have to value each other more than we ever have before, and we have to respect each other more than we ever have before.
One question we are being asked as white men of privilege is to examine our actions, our thoughts, and to make things better. Have you had these discussions with yourself? I know I've had them with myself so far.
Yeah, that's been ongoing with me for many years. I didn't know any people of color. Many Indigenous people in my younger days, obviously, I knew and associated with. When I talk about people of color in this instance, I'm referring to African Americans or African Canadians, until I attended university. And I began to change as a person because of those personal reactions through the friendships that I had. Each of us goes through this self-examination. Each of us must. And we have to remember that equality should be the goal, equality of opportunity, equality in our thoughts and in the way we behave. No one deserves to be treated as less because of their color or their creed or their ethnicity. So that's an ongoing challenge for me, and it led me to become personally involved in causes, personally involved in fighting for Indigenous women's equal rights, for example, in our country. These are causes all of us can support, and I hope do, but we must do them peacefully. We must do them demonstrating our right now. Of course, when we protest, we must do it with an additional requirement of social distance to keep each other safe and to prove that we respect each other's health and well-being. But we must also do these things in a nonviolent way. The right to protest is a powerful and important right in a free society that I have great respect for. And I would want to make sure that people understand they have that right, but I would want them to understand also that they have to remember to demonstrate what it is they're after in their own conduct. And what we're after here is peace and love and understanding.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Larry.
Premier Larry Cush at the Free Press. On Friday, there's a rally at the legislature to show solidarity with those protesting police violence in the U.S. Will you be attending this rally?
We will have government representatives there, Larry. I'll be, as a senior with asthma, I'll be observing social distancing recommendations given to me by my physician and by Dr. Rusin personally. So I will not be in attendance for those reasons, but I will be there in spirit, and I will encourage all who feel strongly about this issue to use the opportunity to safely demonstrate their support for people of color. Black lives matter, all lives matter, of course. But in this instance, on the heels of what's happening in the United States and what has been happening too frequently there, we all have, I think, a responsibility to, in our hearts and in our minds, if you can't come to the protest, to make sure that we stand up for equality and the things we believe in.
As a follow-up, last week you said you would soon be providing Manitobans with a fiscal update. Can you give us today the government's best guess as to what the size of the deficit, the provincial deficit, will be for 2020-2021?
I think we can get that for you in the next few days, Larry. The Treasury Board is just undergoing some work as we speak in respect to those numbers, so we should be able to get that to you in the not-too-distant future. And I wanted to say that on an ongoing basis, I think that's important. Manitobans know that we have a responsibility to address the COVID pandemic in a thoughtful way, not just for today, but on an ongoing basis for the future. And as a province that has always had its reserves tested in view of disasters in the past, we expect that we better be prepared for the next one too. So balancing the responses that we are taking with the need for mid and long-term strengthening of a already heavily indebted province is a big thing. As somebody said on the weekend in comment on a recent poll, it may not make you popular in the short term, but it's a frank discussion that needs to happen for the mid and long term. And so I'm not afraid to lead that discussion, regardless of polls.
From
application for the program as expected. Will it just mean larger checks, or would you possibly open it up more to people, possibly by increasing what that maximum salary could have been to be eligible for the program?
Well, I can just tell you that the group consensus was arrived at looking at programs that other provinces had adopted, and there's, I think, 3 that have already, another discussion that's underway in several others, and looking at their designs and looking at our numbers of workers and so on. So they did consider this question, but I think it's a very fair question, hypothetical as it may be, because we don't know the sign-ups over the next 3 weeks that are going to occur, 2.5 weeks, I should be more accurate, that are going to occur. So it's a fair question. I think we can best answer it by in 2.5 weeks' time by looking at the actual sign-up numbers.
Thank you. And I wanted to switch gears to the MPI rebate checks that have started arriving in people's mailboxes. When we spoke with you a couple weeks ago, you were saying that best guess was between $140 to $160 per ratepayer on average. We're getting some reports of some very, very low checks that people are getting, from $12 to $50. I'm just wondering if there's any sort of flawed calculations there, or is this being taxed by the province, or why we're seeing some on such a low end here?
I think you're going to get a whole range of rebate checks, of course, because the fees that people pay for MPI vary so tremendously. So the rebate checks vary according to those fees that you pay. That being said, I would note again that, and this would be specifically aimed at those who think that we're taking our approaches from a political basis. Previous governments cut rebate checks just before elections. We're now presiding over rebates going out to people during a pandemic, but right after an election. And I don't think that the allegation about political influence is very valid or fair here. We're getting money back into the hands of Manitobans who need some help right now in various ways, whether seniors or the disabled, vulnerable people who need supports. And we're doing it with rebates for MPI and workers' comp as well. And this is all designed to help make sure that affordability needs of Manitobans are better addressed, because they'll get some of their own hard-earned money back, frankly, or they'll get support because they're in a vulnerable category.
From the Brandon Sun, Colin.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Colin Clark from the Brandon Sun here. I was wondering if you know if the money being included in this initiative will be taxable income.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my follow-up question is, how did the provincial government decide which organizations while developing this program?
Yeah, that's a great question and a fair one. We looked at as broad a base as we thought would be workable. We ended up with close to 20 groups, if I'm not mistaken, representing literally hundreds of thousands of Manitoba workers. Each of those was invited to consult not only with their members, but more broadly if they felt that was appropriate. And I think that consultation process is one that should be applauded and, in fact, may well be mimicked by other provinces going forward. Because what it resulted in was a very, very good consensus without any political bias being present whatsoever that we believe will address the fairness that we all want to see in rewarding our frontline people who took additional risks to go to work, whether it was at a hospital, at a grocery store, you name it. And so I'm very thankful for the participation of those groups. And certainly we did endeavor to make sure that we heard from as many as possible Manitobans represented by not only these groups, but others as well.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Diana from 680 CJOB. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says in their latest report that 1 in 10 management businesses would fail under the current rent assistance plan. What, if anything, can you do to help?
I think you were kicking out a bit on me. I'm going to try to answer your question, Diana, and if I've missed it, you're going to tell me in the supplementary. I think you were talking about the rent assist and support programs for small business, if I got you right. What we are doing with the thousands of GAP program supports we've offered to supplement the federal government's programs is to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. There also is another program in design right now that is more for commercial leases or commercial landlords. And so that's a secondary program that we're looking to flesh out as well. And we're also looking at some additional design changes going forward as the federal government may take steps to gradually withdraw its supports. And we want to make sure that we're able to step up in an appropriate way to help Manitoba individuals and businesses that may be impacted by the federal government moving some of its program supports off the table or reducing them somewhat. That talk is already underway at the federal level. We want to be ready to make sure that we offer the gap support that's needed if the federal government gap begins to widen.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, obviously we're in phase 2 right now. What's your own personal level of comfort with the recent restrictions? For example, are you going to take your wife out for dinner anytime soon, whether that be indoors or outdoors? Where are you at personally with this recent restrictions?
Yeah, well, you're asking me where I'm at personally on these restrictions. I'm of two minds. How's that? I think most Manitobans are. I'm really excited to see Manitobans having the chance to use the freedom that this next stage is offering them, and I'm nervous too. I'm nervous too because I really want Manitobans to remember to stay vigilant, keep doing the social distancing, keep washing your hands, take care of your health, make sure you respect each other. And I've got to say, don't put on big social gatherings like powwows and cultural events right now. This is not an appropriate time to do that. And I'm going to be writing the Prime Minister after my call with him last Thursday. I didn't get the sufficient clarity I would like to get from the PM on this issue. We've had a federal minister telling First Nations that it's their right to go ahead with powwows if they want. This is not on. This is not acceptable. And it's not because it's First Nation, it's because Public Health Act applies to everybody in our province. Indigenous, not Indigenous. Race, creed, or color has nothing to do with this. We're all in this together. You can't send a message that because you're of a certain race or creed that you get to have big public events that exceed the rules. And the rules are 50. 50. I repeat, 50. Please abide by these rules. Remember that our progress will be sustained if we all respect each other's need for protections. And that means following Dr. Roussen's and the government's public health guidelines. So I'm going to be asking the Prime Minister to please be clear about this. Don't have his ministers going out and saying that people can disrespect public health rules because of culture. That is not on. It's not helpful. It's most unhelpful. We've got tons of cultural events all over the province that people have canceled, all over the country. Powwow's been canceled from coast to coast. We can't have a powwow that breaks the rules. If we change the rules, abide by the new rules. But until we do, abide by the rules that are there. They're there to protect you, and our First Nations leaders have done such a tremendous job in keeping COVID out of their communities. We don't need to slide back now. So I need the federal government to make sure it doesn't send messages that contradict the message I have just sent out, Dr. Roussen sends out regularly as well, that public health orders are to be followed. I ask all Manitobans to remain diligent, vigilant, and to make sure that you continue to be supportive of one another and enjoy this beautiful Manitoba weather, because we are going to beat this thing together.